This evening on the Rock Newman Show, yesterday's midterm elections represent a fork-in-the-road moment for America. We'll talk about the wins, losses, and what's ahead for the nation, our local politics, and more with special guests Julianne Malveaux, Armstrong Williams, and Alexis Denny Kaufmann. That's coming up right now on the Rock Newman Show. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show from the campus of historic Howard University, right here in the nation's capital. I'm Rock Newman, and it is my desire to inspire you with personal stories of extraordinary achievement. Joining me to recap the wins and losses of yesterday's midterm elections are political commentators and fellow media program host Julianne Malveaux, Armstrong Williams, and businesswoman and Obama administration appointee Alexis Denny Kaufmann. Welcome, welcome, welcome to a beautiful Wednesday following a turbulent and crazy Election Day Tuesday.
It was crazy, wasn't it? I don't think I got home until about 1 in the morning. We were praying, of course, that and disappointed with Gillum, but delighted with the House win. So proud of Stacey Abrams. I mean, my girl is enough tea for the fever. She is going to make sure that every vote is counted before she concedes, and that's beautiful. I wish that Gillum had done the same thing, but I do understand the circumstance. But Stacey is just truly a trooper, and I'm just excited as a former president of a women's college to see that Spelmanite just shimmer.
Tell you what I want to do before we get into wins and losses. It was probably 10 years ago, I was doing, and I don't know if Armstrong was interviewing me or if I was interviewing him, but we closed the show out with a bit of a debate about something. And I want to talk about a couple of concepts here that we ended the show with that day. And it was voter fraud and voter suppression. So I want to go to Armstrong and to you first to ask you to weigh in on, as a Republican, as a conservative Republican, do you feel as if there has been evidence of voter fraud across the country? Do you feel as if, and does it rise to a level to be a part of a national debate?
Well, I think if you go back to the campaign between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, I mean, if you go to Chicago, Nixon was convinced that he was robbed of that election in Chicago. And why do I raise that point in our history? I think it's a part of what elections are. You don't go into an election where it transcends party line, where people do whatever is necessary to win that election. Voter fraud, voter suppression, voter manipulation is a part of that process. Some have been around long enough to do it better, some do it worse. But it's not something that is that the Republicans have a monopoly on, or the Democrats. The fact is, you're not going to ever get rid of that process. You will continue to talk about it. Has it diminished? Yes. Will it ever be eliminated? No. Does it make a difference between a victory and a defeat? It depends upon the election. If you're talking specifically about Florida or Georgia, I would say absolutely not. But it's there, it will always be there, and there's very little we can do to change it.
You're talking about the fraud?
Yes.
Okay. So that, which obviously takes me directly to, because it seems as if...
Can I just interject one thing about the fraud?
Yeah.
Because the word voter fraud has been co-opted by the right to imply this mythical voting by dead people, illegal immigrants, Chris Kobach. It's a voter fraud. They try to pretend that this is a magical problem that only voter ID and suppression can solve. So I would just try to suggest we talk about voter suppression. Voter fraud is
no.
actually a fantasy, in my view.
Okay. You say it's a fantasy. Armstrong said it may have some impact, and that's why I want. That's why I want to get to this, because, and I'll say this, Julianne, and please respond. That it appears that when the red flag of voter fraud is raised, there is rarely ever anything to substantiate it. Rarely in these last years. And you were going to say?
I was going to say the numbers suggest that we have exponentially more voter suppression than voter fraud. Barbara Arnwine has talked about the voting rights activists, the Transformative Justice Coalition, has talked about the fact that in I believe it was the 2016 election, you're probably closer to these numbers than I am, so correct me if I'm wrong, but she said that there were perhaps 3 to 5, is less than a fraction of 1%. People don't go around trying to vote fraudulently. What has happened, what we've seen, she had a map of shame that she developed in 2013 that showed it shows the states where people have gone out of their way. And we can look at the conflict of interest in a Secretary of State, i.e. in charge of election integrity, throwing away 53,000 voter registrations, 80% of which were African American, in a race that's being hotly contested against an African American woman. That's not about, if there's any fraud, that Brian Kemp, Mr. Kemp is the fraud, not anything else. And so I think we have to be really, really clear that we're talking about. And with all due respect, when you go back to Chicago in 1960, that's like going to Aesop's fables in terms of the contemporary context. I mean, what we really have, and I'm respecting his point, but not the context of it. What we know is that there has been systematic voter suppression. I'm not talking about showing your ID. I don't have a problem with ID. I have a problem with a lot of other things that people are being forced to do, jumping through hoops. A 93-year-old woman who has been continuously registered to vote since 1968, being denied the opportunity to vote last evening. That's voter suppression.
And I would like to just see a country where we make it as easy to vote as it is to buy a gun, and as hard to buy a gun as it is to vote. Because the whole idea that people are standing in line, and this is where I get into some racially tinged arguments on Twitter, because some of my sort of liberal friends are on there saying, I don't see why people are complaining about standing in line 2 hours, 3 hours to vote. I'm like, some people can't stand in line 2 or 3 hours. They have an hourly job. They don't have daycare. They have a boss who's going to fire them.
Yesterday, 3 people left. I waited for 45 minutes in a polling place in my neighborhood where usually it's 15 minutes in and out. I didn't mind waiting, but it was the middle of the day. But 2 young white guys both had to get to work, and one of them, we were chatting. I said, "Are you leaving?" He said, "I've got to get to work. I can't be late." I said, "Are you going to come back?" He said, "I don't know."
Okay, so let's hit this. Let's hit this bull between the eye, because when we talk about voter suppression, it just about universally, Armstrong, is aimed at the efforts of Republicans. You just don't hear voter suppression being talked about or practiced by Democrats. And Armstrong Williams, the conservative right, says.
The concept that you just mentioned is totally illogical, but you say that be practiced by Democrats. It's just that the media chooses to focus more when it involves races that involve Republicans. Look, but let me just say, and I think we all will agree, no person in this day and age should ever be denied the right to vote. In fact, we should go our way to make sure that every vote counts. And if that vote kind of means that you lose or win, that's the process.
Right.
I would defend that to the end of the day. And there is voter suppression, and it's on both sides. Julianne knows it, Alexia knows it. It's on both sides.
I've not seen
I'm
it
not
with
with you on
Democrats.
that.
Yes, it's on both sides.
I'm sorry, Armstrong, I haven't seen it. North Carolina, Reverend William Barber, it's just a really perfect example. When we look at the 2016 campaign, in 2012, I went down, I was in North Carolina until 2012. Went back down to campaign for Hillary. Saw one of my old security guards from Bennett. I said, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you. Have you voted?" He said, last time there had 8 voting places in this particular county. He said, now there's 1.
Right.
He said, I can't vote there. I said, why? He
Right.
says, it's the courthouse and I owe tickets. So he was, he was intimidated from
Also
voting.
in North Carolina, they closed Sunday early voting because they knew the black churches were going souls to the polls. So I think it's systematic. It's not just one trick. It's not just, it's let's make less machines. Let's make the polling places further away. Let's make the days less convenient. Let's scare people. Maybe they'll get arrested or they'll have back child support. Let's make it systematic, and it's not a Trump thing. This is a GOP thing that has been going on, and I think we've seen it on steroids since gutting the Voting Rights Act. And I think what we've learned is we need the Voting Rights Act back. This idea that we're in a post-racial, I love and respect President Obama, but the idea that we are now in a post-racial world and we can ignore it is false.
So let me go back to
it's
Armstrong.
a fight on the diversity too, Doc. Let me just quickly. It's about the diversity. I mean, Republicans, with all due respect to them, are comfortable when you have a homogenous voting participation group. When you start adding younger people, blacker and browner people, they know that those folks tend Democrat, and those are the people that they're attempting to peripheralize. Students, young people. If you are living on a campus, the young person who comes from California to Howard University, DC is now their residence. They should be able to vote here. In North Carolina, you've had young people who've been prevented from voting because they're students. And so it's about the Republican resistance to diversity, in my opinion.
Can I ask?
No. Republican resistance to diversity. So Armstrong, case in point is we're going to show a clip in just a moment about Stacey Abrams. High profile race. Brian Kemp, as was said earlier, Secretary of State, monitoring, the fox watching the hen house. So, this is not beat up Republican Day, but I want you to answer to this. The behavior in that race of Kemp, who repeatedly has been admonished by the courts for practicing a form of voter suppression, which is highly racially tinged. Do you acknowledge what so many people see in clear sight as to what has happened in that race with Kemp?
Elections are like wars. You don't fight wars fair. You don't fight wars with morality. It's corrupt.
Wow.
It's immoral. You do whatever is necessary to get you to victory. That is the way it works. And anybody
I'm sorry, are you serious?
Oh, but it is true. It is true. It's like a war, and people will do just about anything to win. I say anything to win. Look at the kinds of things that our president has said over the last year and a half.
Oh, we're going to get to
This
that.
is where we are now in the world.
We're going
and
to
if
get to
you're
that.
not strong enough to be in the game, and if you not know how to game the game, you need to learn to play the game or play it better, or you won't win. That's where we are. This is not a day to get sympathy. Either you come to this election prepared to do whatever is necessary to win, or you
So
should stay home and not get involved in the first place.
You're supposed to lie, cheat,
That's
and
what
steal
they
to
do,
win?
and everybody watching this program knows that's exactly what they do. It's corrupt, it's nasty, it's ugly, and it's immoral, and that's what people become.
So
Yes.
that would be a statement, Armstrong, that would be saying if it's all of those things, then why the hell get involved?
That's exactly right. It's for the big boys and the big girls. It's not for the little people. They should stay home.
I think
that's what this is about.
First of all, that's
It's a
absurd.
war.
First of all, that's absurd. I mean, our nation is not built on lie, cheat, and steal to get what
But
you
it
want,
is.
although many
It
people
was
do.
built. Slavery is built on lies, steal, and steal. What are you talking about?
trying
That's
to
what
get
slavery
past-
is
we're
built
trying to
on.
be a better
That's what our
nation.
history of our country is built on lies.
Well, this
And
is
cheating.
this is
Okay?
a great.
I'm kind of happy to hear that acknowledgement.
It's a fact.
Well, this
But-
is a good clip for people to use to make an argument, couple arguments. First of all, I think that we need to look nationally, not only at bringing back the Voting Rights Act, but we have to look at a 24/7 until 2020 and beyond opportunity to register, to vote, to make sure elections are free and fair, Armstrong, free and fair.
yeah.
Number two, I think that there's an implicit conflict of interest when the Secretary of State is also in a race. This is like you being a boxer and the referee.
Yeah.
In all
So you say,
fairness,
oh, that was below the
it's
belt.
It's not unprecedented.
I know it's not
It's not
unprecedented.
unprecedented. Let's not make it
No,
seem as though this is
I'm-
the first
It
time.
doesn't
not
make
the
it right.
first
I
time, but
have
this
a
is-
personal question for you as an African American man.
Or maybe
No,
it is beat
as
up.
an American.
No,
I don't want to be in a box.
Well, you're not in a box.
I'm an American.
Okay, you're in a
Talk to me as an American. I'm not black or white. I'm an American
Okay,
today.
well, okay.
Let's talk
As
that
an
way.
American.
Thank you.
But as an American,
Yes.
but I can tell you when I read about Selma or see Selma, when I see the blood shed for African Americans, not all Americans, to have the right to vote. When I see and learn and know people who have gone through hell for the right to vote, and you know, somewhere, you know, the numbers are not equal. You know the numbers are skewed to disenfranchise black and brown people and right now in our history, and like they were in the 50s and 60s. So how do you feel personally? I mean, just as a human, not as a commentator. I'm not so
Well, no,
not
maybe,
so sure.
maybe she's not asking the wrong person.
Because I'm Jewish, so I can tell you that when I look personally, when I was proud of my synagogue last Friday. They had a service for the victims of the synagogue in Pittsburgh. They invited the imams and the pastors from the area. And what struck me was our rabbi, he didn't have 11 candles of memorial up there. He had 14. And those 14 were the 11 victims in the synagogue, the 2 people shot in the Kroger parking lot, and 1 more victim of a hate crime, which I didn't even know had happened, which was the Ferguson activist who might have been lynched. Now,
Lynched and castrated, by the way.
I didn't know that piece. And to me, when you have suffered pain, your people, yourself, your family, it should make you, it makes me at least,
So
more
let Armstrong
open to
answer
pain.
that
So
question.
that's the question. How do you feel?
Listen,
doesn't.
He's got to feel
listen,
something.
Let me just tell you this. I grew up in a family that believed in morality, believed in God, believed in integrity, and believed in ethics. And anytime I see someone that could be my mother or my brother or someone who may be crippled or handicapped, denied the right to vote through no fault of their own. Sometimes it may be because of ignorance or lack of knowledge. They just did not have the information, and to have them denied, obviously it cuts like a knife. That is the process that we're in. Of course, I would fight. It's not something I would do. It's not a candidate I would want to support and advocate, but that's what people have become. We've become a place where we become desensitized. We lack compassion. It's just like people go out and shoot up a synagogue, shoot up the church that my cousin died in Charleston. It's all the same. People don't have hearts anymore. It's all about winning. It's all about money. It's all about getting the edge, and we forget about God. We forget about moral striving, and this is where we are. And listen, it's not going to change. It's going to get worse.
Okay,
that's the sad part.
Armstrong, you really you really allow me here sort of an avenue to go where I want to proceed here. So you talk about growing up in a family with those absolute humane virtues.
Yes.
And each of the qualities that you talked about, each of those virtues are one that the gentleman, I don't want to use that word, that the person sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue now, the leader of the free world, all of those virtues, for every outward appearance, he seems to be devoid of.
Well,
So how do you connect that dot from that moral training and upbringing to support for someone who has now proven unmistakably, overtly, to be a racist, to be a misogynist, to be someone, to be a crook? How does it square to support that person with the foundation that you have?
I think there's a deeper issue that we don't talk about. You see, it doesn't matter who's in the White House, who's in leadership. They don't change who and what I am. I don't allow myself to become a bigot or angry or violent or nasty and mean because a person gives me a license to do it. Because if a person gives you a license to do it, that's who you are already. So it's not just an indictment of the leadership, it's an indictment of we the people. The president can only do and bring out of you what's already there. The American people are really showing us who they are, and we believe them for who they are. And so it's not just the president, because I'm not going to be rude to women and talk about grabbing women like President Trump, because that's not who I am. I'm not going to be disrespectful in that way. He doesn't give me a license to be something that I'm not. So what we should do is not just give the president a look. We need to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what have we been already?
Well,
that
I
the
got a
president
picture
has
for
given
this.
us a license and the free spirit to come out with it without any shame.
I got a picture for this
Yes.
You have a picture for this, and I think we can show it. This is the picture of
because you have
a
of
picture
the very stable genius.
of a very stable genius Can I say family member or not?
Yes,
Oh.
one of my closest family. So I want to go to your point of the president doesn't change who we are. I disagree. At the risk of going extreme, I believe the president has radicalized a segment of the population. Maybe the seeds were here. They were planted with Willie Horton ads and dog whistles. The GOP was never this big open rainbow family. But my brother, 18 months apart, who I love with all my heart, 2 years ago was a conservative who I might say watched your show, was in line with you, listened to Rush Limbaugh. Let me show you my brother today. I asked his permission to show this. He's become somewhat of an internet meme after standing behind Donald Trump in a Las Vegas rally.
So look, so when you talk about is showing us what is happening.
But what's the point with your brother?
The point is, my brother, I really believe my brother has been radicalized. He
wasn't like that before.
No, he was conservative.
Well, why would you have been radicalized? You come from the same gene pool.
What's
the difference?
Okay, maybe he had vulnerabilities.
Why
he
do
had
you have them?
perceptions.
Choices.
I can't.
Choices in the end.
Let me
but
tell
Armstrong,
I'm sorry,
the issue
this
here is
ecosystem of propaganda and lies. I have a brother now who will say to me, with 5 kids with pre-existing conditions, that the president says he's going to support pre-existing conditions. Within 10 minutes of the Pittsburgh shootings, he's online with the false flag theories, the whole
No,
thing.
he's also Jewish.
He's also Jewish. And let me tell you, this morning, just in case you don't know what's coming next in the right-wing conspiracy theories, I want you to be prepared. Because this is how I learn. I go to his Twitter feed, which I can't follow.
Okay, so what is it?
You will not guess this morning's victim.
Let us know.
Fox News. The whole right-wing Twitter sphere is off of Fox. Fox is now a liberal tool. They were being flipped to the Dems because they called
Because they
it
refused
early.
to show that
Because they
commercial?
called it early. They're all going to be watching something called OANN. I don't know what that is. One America.
One American Network.
Yeah.
There is a whole get rid of Fox theme on all of these right-wing Twitter. So there's always an enemy. There's always an enemy.
The tension here, I think, was released when President Obama was elected. As you say about that other person, leader of the free world, African American man, brilliant, erudite. You couldn't ask for anyone better in terms of morality, in terms of presentation, in terms of family values. I mean, you can't. But in any case, there were a whole lot of white people, frankly, who were highly and profoundly offended by the very presence of President Obama, and we saw it. We saw it in the way that his family was demonized, the use of the monkey, the ape, the simian, to talk about not only him, but the lovely girls and his wife. All these people, and they were angry. They were angry. You saw a Congress who anything he tried to do, they stopped. Now, he wasn't as effective, we've talked about this before, as I thought he could have been. But whenever he tried to do something after the first 2 years, it was resistance, resistance, resistance. And then this person comes down an escalator at Trump Tower and starts talking about Mexican people. They're rapists, they're MS-13. Every Mexican for him is MS-13, which is ridiculous. That commercial that Fox, to their credit, refused to run. NBC did run during that football game, which I think was horrid. CNN refused to run. It was beyond a dog
I like to give a
whistle.
different perspective.
No, I'm not finished, Armstrong. Let me finish, please.
You're never finished, by the way, but go ahead.
That was very snarly, but that's okay. I'm gonna let you get away with that today.
Right.
Haven't been with you in a while. I love you
Okay,
much,
no
so I'll let
problem.
you get away with it. But here's the point: these people were unleashed. They were unleashed, and this is what we've seen, and they are now feeling empowered. The fact that 2 women were killed in a yoga studio in Tallahassee. By these incel people. Incel is involuntarily celibate. But these are these white men who feel so entitled to women that if you don't have sex with them, they'll kill you or rape you or whatever. So these people have been unleashed by the rhetoric of Trump, and I think perhaps that's the case with your brother. I'm not sure.
I think your response will also hold on. I think your response will also be in part responding to the point I want to make here. Is that the severely soiled diaper of America is racism.
No.
And
I think that's too simplistic.
It is racism. And in part, when you look at these races, when you have a Gilliam versus DeSantis, and again, DeSantis gets 4 million votes in Florida after clearly, again, it being demonstrated his racist tendencies and his allegiance to a leader who has racist tendencies. Then 4 million people go out and vote. So that's 4 million people tolerating that racism.
And celebrating.
So let me give you a different perspective, okay? The very same people, and of course, tremendous respect for Dr. Malveaux, I've known her a long time. The very same people that she called racist and snarly, these are the people.
I called you snarly, baby.
These are the very same people who gave President Obama a chance in these states. There's a reason why he was able to defeat a John McCain. Understand, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, in Michigan, in parts of the South, these are the same people that voted President Obama in the White House. Because one of the things that's lost in this debate right now are the issues. To reduce people to believe that they vote for somebody because of their race, or their gender, or their sexual preference is an insult. People care about those caravans. People care about their taxes.
The
people
caravans
care about
that are
people
that are
They're 1,000 miles away.
800 miles
With
away.
Looks like-
poor
it
and
looks-
starving
yeah,
and
but,
weak
but
people.
my point is not about how far they are. It's something that people
Concept.
care about. It's the concept. They get the concept. People care about markets that are overregulated. And people also understand when they have more money in their wallets. And Americans have shown us throughout history, when they have more money in their wallets and the economy is going well, they forget about morality, they forget about values. What they care about is, what did the president say? The only reason you vote for a Democrat because you're sick of winning. That resident, people are making more money, the economy is doing better.
Why did he campaign on the economy then?
Yeah, because the Republicans asked him to. He wanted to push home the caravans. But what I'm saying to you is not as simplistic as race. When you have a Ms. Abrams talking about increasing taxes in Georgia, that's not going to resonate with
education in Georgia, where
taxes in general is not resonate with most people.
Where the quality of
point
education
is,
in Georgia has devolved, and that's
people
why she's
are
talking
more
about raising
interested.
taxes.
People vote more at the ballot about the issues than about somebody's race and their gender. I'm sorry.
Okay,
So then
so-
why did they use that Oprah-sounding commercial? Well, I'm going to give my sister. It was very exaggerated. You all heard it. Why
The
did
magical negress.
Yeah.
You
Why
always
did- why
have
did you-
ignorance and people exploiting
why did
voting
DeSantis
patterns.
talk about
People do-
monkeying up?
You're talking about ignorance there, and
Yes, and you have ignorance.
And to your point, Armstrong, to your point, people, you're saying that people are voting and that they're voting their interest.
Yes.
That's what that's
they're
what
not.
you're saying.
Yes,
But they're not.
Except
They're not.
that, folks throughout Texas, Louisiana, just come on around, Alabama, Mississippi, and the rest. Those individuals, when you start talking about this tax cut and the economy, those primarily white, rural, uneducated voters are not really voting their interest because they're not the beneficiary.
Not true.
They're not the
Not true.
beneficiary of these policies.
Everyone in some small, middle, or large way has benefited from the tax cut. I'm
Everyone,
sorry.
I
dispute it.
disagree.
Everyone has
and
benefited.
furthermore, what we know about the tax cut is that it's a temporary tax cut for people. It's not a temporary tax cut for corporations, but it's temporary for people. What we also know,
Temporary money is better than no money.
what we also know is that 45 came back and said, as soon as we're finished with the midterms, praise God that the Democrats won the Congress, because he said we're going to go about entitlement cuts. Entitlement cuts are Social Security, whether you're black, white, Asian, Latino, if you are over a certain age, you get Social Security. So he said he wanted to cut that. That's not in anybody's interest. And we have the issue of health care. One of the most heartbreaking things I saw in the wake of 2016 was going into West Virginia and seeing white former coal miners who had black lung, who had pre-existing conditions, who voted for Trump, and then they said, oh, what's going to happen?
And they
Well, what
didn't
do you think-
realize black lungs cut out of the new
Let me
health
tell you
care.
what my problem with the conversation today. And I've got to challenge you both on this, okay? You make it seem as though that the Republicans are the devils. All the issues in the world, there are no issues why the Democrats should have just won. They had no issues. They were just perfect.
Oh,
But the
no,
people
no
voted
one
for
has
them.
said that.
But it's the way it sounds. As if
Armstrong-
the Democrats have
Armstrong,
reached
I
the
have been
state
one of
of
the no.
perfection. No, but
Just
you
I
never
have
said
one
it
of the
today.
I have
But
been
you
one
never
of the
said it today.
harshest
What are the
critics.
problems with
I
the
have been one of the
Democratic Party?
harshest critics
Well,
of the
tell me what the
Democratic
problem
Party.
is.
I'll
Tell me
tell
the
you
other
one.
reason why they didn't win.
Well,
Tell me why they didn't win the
among
Senate.
other things-
After Kavanaugh, after you all went and said it was a Kavanaugh,
know-
we're going to come out, the women are going to come out and vote against Trump, we're going to take over the Senate. It did not happen.
But we got the House. But we got the House.
Yeah,
So,
we knew he was gonna win the
so
House.
we have
So why did
divided
Kavanaugh
government.
win?
We
You know
have
what?
So we
divided
gotta
government.
get to the House.
You bring up a word that I wrote on the back of 3 pieces of
What?
paper I've got. Women.
Why are they still voting for Trump,
No,
Kevin?
but I'm saying, but the point is that women in this particular election yesterday were the individuals that swung these races where you had, and I pulled out your buddy Dave Bratt down in Virginia. Dave Bratt supplanted Eric Cantor. Eric Cantor was thought to be too moderate. So the Tea Party, Dave Bratt, came in, rode in on his right-wing policies, and he just got beat by a girl. He just got beat by a lady. A lady. He just got beat by a lady. Abigail Spanberger. Because of women. And you know what? All over the country, these victories of the reason why Congress is now controlled by Democrats is because of women.
But Rock, they're not women running because they're women. They have the right ideas for their constituents.
I'm saying women put them in office is what I am saying.
Let's not marginalize them by saying they're women running because they're women. That's not it. There's got to be more than because you're a woman, because you're black. You got to have ideas.
But these are people have ideas. That's not, you're diminishing people, Armstrong, when you say that.
Not.
Yes, you are.
I am saying they're more than just women.
But the issue is, and you're right, women are not monolithic. 53% of white women voted for the orangutan. And so, you know, I have some real issues, frankly, at this point in time with white women. And every sister ain't a sister as far as I'm concerned. So I don't refer to white women necessarily as sisters in the context of electoral politics.
You think it's only white women?
Well, not very many black women voted for.
How do you know this?
But from exit polls and from other data that's out there.
You're marginalizing.
No,
you're making
96% of African American women voted for
Dr. Malveaux. Now, let me just tell you something about these women, because I've met some of them. Alyssa Slotkin, who eked out a victory about 1 in the morning and was on the phone with me about 20 minutes before. She served 3 tours in Iraq. She was in the CIA. She served Bush and Obama in the NSC. Chrissy Houlihan was a fighter pilot. She was a COO.
My point.
These should have been Republicans.
I don't care if they're Republicans. I don't care if they're Republicans.
They were in red. They were in bright red.
Your
states,
party.
Bright red
I want to know
districts.
where is my first job? Stuffing envelopes for Gerald Ford as a volunteer. I'm not so proud of it. My dad, also not so proud. He was an open-minded guy. Ran something called Democrats for Nixon in Philadelphia.
OMG.
All right, OMG. But I'm saying open mind. I'm saying Republicans. Where is your party of free trade, low deficit, all the things? It's blown out the window for all these culture wars, the national security, cozying up to North Korea, Russia, the Philippines, the dictators, Saudi Arabia. Where is the party that you guys were even 10 years ago? It's not the same party.
But there are members of the party that fight for those issues every day in the party.
I'm actually
They still
nostalgic
fight
for the Bushes.
Where are they?
The voices are vanishing.
And when we come to fairness, these women, just last thing, these women in Pennsylvania, if it hadn't been for striking down gerrymandering and fighting against every trick in the book to stack the Supreme Court, impeach the Supreme Court, we wouldn't have these 4 women in Congress.
And Democrats love gerrymandering.
Hey,
they are madly in love with it.
I want to make sure you guys understand and the viewers understand that when I held this paper up, it wasn't so much about the women that are running. It was about the women who are voting.
Yeah.
And it was a monumental rejection.
Yeah.
Of the leadership of
was it? Do you really think it was?
Yeah, I think
Really?
it was. I think
don't
it
know.
was because Scott.
Depending on where you are. Let's just do this.
Scott
Depending
Walker.
on where you are in the country.
Yeah.
It's
Scott
a repudiation.
Walker
Scott Walker.
Hey,
Fair
goodbye.
enough.
Who the leader sat next to. So it is women, again, in the suburbs. Fortunately, there are enough educated women who can see through some of the smoke and mirrors that are being put out that are tricking those who are less who are less educated.
But too many white women, however, have chosen the stand by your man approach to politics. So while you're right that some suburban white women, certainly, and we saw some of this in Alabama earlier when Doug Jones was elected, some suburban white women chose to cross party lines, which they hadn't done before. But many, educated or not, educated or not, could choose to continue to stand by their man. I think the other thing that we're forgetting here, and I might slight, I don't agree with Armstrong, but
you just can't bring yourself to.
I'm trying to find something. I'm trying.
But the nature of predatory capitalism, Rock, is the other piece of this. But if we don't talk about economic systems and economic organization enough, and when we talk about economic systems and economic organization, then we understand that those working class white people who continue to vote Republican when the Republican Party is economically against them, that we have to find a way to have a conversation about predatory capitalism that shows people how they're being exploited. Healthcare should be a right, not for anybody, someone who has a good job, but for anybody in this country. We spend $1 in $7 of our GDP on some form of health care. But we can't seem to get this thing under control because we resist the notion that this might be socialism if everybody can have health care. But you know, Medicare for all is not some socialistic idea. It's something that from a pure supply and demand system absolutely works. We see, and this is one for you, Armstrong, medical devices. Republicans want them taxed. Democrats, I've written several times, Democrats need to back off of that, because when you have a medical device tax, what you're doing is passing the cost down to the consumer. But Republicans feel strongly about that medical device tax because they want to use it to lower the cost of health care.
I want to say something about the president.
Normally, if you say something, you know, a host will say, "Let me give a disclaimer. Let me make a claim." For those out there who are listening, when you hear Dr. Julianne Malveaux, we introduced her as Julianne Malveaux. It's Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who is an economist, just in case y'all didn't know.
I want to say something about the president. You know, I have a lot of respect for the office of the president. I actually have a lot of respect for President Trump. I don't like his character. I don't like his antics. I don't like his pettiness. I don't like it. But
so what is it that you do like?
I like the fact that Donald Trump is not a Republican or Democrat. I don't know what he is in terms of politics.
He's a Trump.
I think he only cares about the victory. Whatever gets him the victory is what he cares about.
Whatever gets him the victory. Not the U.S.
That's what I say.
Personal.
What gets him the victory. But still, in all the craziness and the chaos, there's a lot that he gets done. And also, no matter how you may interpret the midterm elections, Dr. Malveaux and Alexia, the fact that wherever Trump went, he got people out and they won. I mean, come on, Indiana? I mean, Claire McCaskill? Listen, you should not ignore Donald Trump. For all his craziness, Donald Trump,
you cannot ignore.
he's
you should not.
Yeah.
He's very effective.
I'll give him effective.
He is very effective.
But because he appeals to the lowest common denominator.
That's an insult.
That's not an insult.
Yes,
he
it
said,
is.
here come
You
the
gotta give people
hordes.
more
Here
credit.
come the hordes of immigrants, and everybody becomes
People are
frightened.
more intelligent.
As
than you
big
give
a
credit
note
for.
as Rock had on women, I had a note for myself that said, "Do not say fascist. Do not say fascist. Do not say fascist."
You about to say fascist?
I'm not going to say fascist. But
you
what
just
I
did.
will say is that when people talk about this Trump movement, there are a lot of movements in history that have been horrible. There's the Hitler movement, the Stalin movement, the Mussolini. These were movements. Tens of thousands of cheering people wearing matching things in stadiums and spouting. That doesn't make them good.
And you say that in the context of what? What are you really trying to say?
I'm saying just because lots of people pack a stadium cheering for someone
They do it with
adore.
all these presidential candidates. Obama, this is not unusual
This
with
is a
President Trump. So
different-
you saying it for everybody else?
No, I believe that the line between reality and fiction has become totally blurred, as I have seen firsthand, and I don't think any movement is necessarily good.
America loves celebridom. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They love celebrity figures.
So you know, we're talking about these issues here, which are in front of us, which prevent us getting to that more perfect union. We're talking about voter suppression, racism. We're talking sexism and those kinds of things. Where I want to go now is there were a pair of Native American congresswomen going to the House, 2 Muslim congresswomen going to the House, and Connecticut and Massachusetts are sending the first black women to Congress. This is the first time.
This is exciting.
So with the backdrop that we've created here of doom and gloom, there's some bright lights.
And don't forget 7 governors with several women, multiple state houses, and multiple attorney generals, which are holding the line.
That's
and this
very
is
important.
the Koch brothers battle.
3 African-American attorneys general, including Letitia James in New York. You know,
A Howard girl, might I say.
What we have is an oscillation here. I mean, as in some ways, Tuesday night was gloomy. On the other hand, you have 2 stellar organizations that are in place moving to 2020. Andrew Gillum ain't going nowhere. And the organization that he built can begin the the process of taking Florida back for the presidential election. Stacey Abrams, we don't know what's happened yet, but she also has built a hell of an organization. And around the country, you've seen people reawakened around their involvement with democracy. I think that's beautiful. But we know that the increasing diversity that we see makes some people uncomfortable.
I want
people
each
who
of
used
you,
to be in the majority are now
I
not.
want each of you, and Alexis, you can start first. Give me your Beto O'Rourke observation.
Well, I didn't, to be honest, I didn't focus that much on it because I saw a lot of hype about a state I know little about, and I didn't want to generalize. I looked a lot more at Gillum, if I can, and I found when Gillum debated DeSantis, that's the messaging I wanted to hear from Democratic leadership. And I said, if he doesn't win governor of Florida, let's have him run the Democratic Party, because he took it on. Beto O'Rourke galvanized Texas, but Andrew Gillum galvanized a hell of a lot of people, as did Stacey Abrams, not only in their competence of running campaigns. Look at the Trump campaign, the revolving door, the Survivor Island. Look at the competence, no drama. Look at the professionalism. That is governing. Those are the qualities you want in governing, not just orating. I think they all three brought that to the table, and I think they all three should be what we look to.
So Armstrong, Beto O'Rourke, your thoughts?
He was challenging former President Barack Obama. He was trying to use the same kind of campaign style that the president, and he had all the money in the world, just didn't spend it wisely. And they also underestimated Trump going to Texas, even though he and Cruz had this frenemy thing going on. He didn't exploit that enough. I mean, he's someone that's probably going to run for president in the future. But I want to say this about Gillum, which nobody talks about, because I don't know if the story has come out or not. Gillum's would have won this election had it not been for his closest allies that he trusted him. One of his best friends who began to, I think maybe he was cooperating with the FBI or cooperating with the Trump officials.
He started leaking,
He started leaking his emails, his confidential information, giving fuel to the fire, and it ultimately is what really sunk him over the weekend in this election. He was betrayed within. If it were not for that, and you've got to be very careful on people you select in your trusted world of advisors that you trust, and he was betrayed.
You know, I would somewhat agree with you, because certainly his closest ally, his FAMU classmate, is the gentleman who leaked these emails at the last minute, which suggested that perhaps he knew that the Hamilton tickets had come from a FBI contact. But to Beto O'Rourke, I think he ran an extraordinary campaign when we consider that Texas has not elected a statewide Democrat in almost 30 years. Ann Richards was the last one. So I think he did a great job. I think I agree with, actually, I hate to say this. I think I agree with.
It happened.
It happened, yeah, finally. Okay, there's your check mark. Somebody check it off. But I think in terms of the deployment of his resources, because he did have all the money in the world. We do see in some parts of Texas not enough turnout. More turnout in Houston and Dallas. San Antone, some of these places where you have heavy minority populations, wasn't what it was. I think the other thing about Beto O'Rourke that we have to remember is that we have made the mistake of always assuming that the Latino community is going to march lockstep with the African American community and march lockstep with Democrats, and they don't. I mean, first, the two things are going on. Number one, we overestimate the impact of the Latino community, and that there's a large community. It's now the largest minority, but they're not all eligible to vote. So when you spend a lot of money targeting a community that's not going to turn out, what are you doing? But secondly, we really have to look at the subtleties inside that community by the differences among Latinos by generation and other things. But I think Beto did a really great job, and as he's not going anywhere, he'll be back around, just like Gillum and Abrams. He put together a hell of an organization, and I think that those folks like the Tom Steyers of the world who invested in that campaign are going to continue to invest in Beto O'Rourke.
I just want to give this to the Democrats, and this may surprise you. The Democrats' future is in Texas. You can see where Harpolton had an upset in South Carolina and won the Republican Senate seat. Red states are not as sacred to the Republicans in the future as they've been in the past. I think what Julianne is describing is the progress in Georgia with Abrams, with Gillum in Florida, and with O'Rourke in Texas. It's only indication that if the Republicans don't get the message of what's going on, it's just a matter of time. In 2020, 2022, that before they lose these states, and it would be a major game changer for the Republicans in presidential and midterm elections.
And so, which brings me to Maryland.
Yeah.
Maryland.
Oh.
Overwhelmingly registered as Democrats, the population. And Governor Hogan, the Republican, yesterday, he shellacked
57 to 42.
30% of the black vote.
shellacked
Yeah.
Ben
30%.
Jealous. Let's talk about that
Okay,
dynamic.
three things. Ben Jealous was a poor candidate. Let's just start with that. I mean, he didn't have the money. He couldn't raise the money. He focused so much on Baltimore that he ignored the rest of the state. He's not personable. He's a nice person. We all know him. I've worked with him. But he's not personable. He's not the kind who's going to kiss babies and do retail politics. You got to do retail politics. Number two, he failed to court the biggest names in black Maryland politics. He didn't court, Rashern Baker did endorse him, but Rashern did not do a lot for him. Isaiah Leggett from Montgomery County never endorsed him. Somehow Ben seemed to think, I thought he was a classic millennial. And in that comes entitlement. I'm the Democratic nominee, so y'all have to support me. No, you don't. And Maryland has had a track record with African Americans of crossing party lines. People like Hogan for whatever reason. I mean, and that showed up.
Well, the Hogan, first of all, he had his bout with cancer, still generated a lot of sympathy. But he was one of the few Republicans who were not afraid to distance himself and attack the president for who and what he was. So he was not able to have the label attached of being like Trump, of being a racist, of being insensitive. He played it very well. And I don't know if you saw the ad where he had people who happened to just be black in the ads, and what they were saying to him, they were very warm to him.
He had a lot of black presence in his ads.
He had a lot of good ads.
He manipulated, and he had a black lieutenant governor.
Very effective, very effective.
Our Howard graduate.
Yeah,
also.
he was. Listen, in other words, he placed resources in their communities, which shows you that you care, and he was involved, and they rewarded him for it.
You know, last night I was with a young sister who shared that she had voted for Hogan. The thing that she raised was the fact that he has some kind of a student loan fund. So if you have more than $30,000 in student loans, you could get a $5,000 rebate. There's several things that he's done for students, and so she said she herself had been beneficiary of that, and that's why she voted for Hogan. She said she didn't know anything about Ben Jealous. Ben Jealous talked about free college tuition, but he didn't talk about people who had crushing debt, and that's where she was. So that's just a share.
The Congress is now controlled by Democrats.
Right.
So tell us what's going to happen in terms of what should happen in terms of their best strategy of dealing with the Trump administration. That's one thing. And then let me just drill down on something that's critically important to everybody still, and that is, of course, health care and the protection of pre-existing conditions.
Okay, so I'll hit both of those, but first I just don't want to get lost in the shuffle, because this is what happens in the Trump era. He sucks the oxygen out of the room. We spend 35 minutes talking about Trump. We see the country through the lens of Trump. Every talk show is through the lens of Trump. I just want to go back to governors, attorney generals, state houses. This is how the Koch brothers, this is how the Republicans built it, redistricting from the bottom. This is going to stop redistricting in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania. You have a women governor in Michigan with voting right protections, in Nevada. And can I just say, waking up today knowing that Chris Kobach will not be governor, that Scott Walker is gone as governor, and that Paul LePage is moving to Florida, I'm good. I feel like there's a little better America, because actually our states, if the Republican Party, with its respect for federalism and states' rights, continues to be consistent and allow the states to function as they should, the states may just save us. The women, the young people, let me not say the women, the black women are saving us right now. And as I say,
I was about to interrupt you when you said the women. I was going to say, don't go there.
I went to an event with Barbara Armwine.
And now you can give her a high five, right?
I don't know about all that.
I went to an event with Barbara Armwine at the AMA Church in Fort Washington a few weeks ago, and she gave her PowerPoint with the picture of shame, the map of shame, and she said, vote like a black woman. But actually, there is a mobilization in America that if we have to stay focused on local and state, all this drama isn't going to help. Okay, that said, the drama Congress. I always say that we should have the heart of Democrats, but the messaging skill of Republicans. And I have been heartsick at the lack of national leadership in the Democratic Party. Who can we point to as speaking for us? Who can we point to as taking the fight to try? It's open, and I get these nuanced text messages and tweets with all the, I'm like, no, do what the Republicans do. Go all over 10 platforms, say the same thing 10 times with the same 3 words. Everyone's got a different opinion.
You're absolutely right. I'm so sick of getting these emails every 5 minutes. Chip in. If I hear the words chip in, well, chip in $3 to, and it's always like urgent. Chip in $3 now to save your life. It's ridiculous.
Well, they're not
I'm
asking for
afraid
enough
the
money.
Democrats are going to come out
kumbaya,
kumbaya with a few exceptions, like Elijah Cummings, maybe Adam Schiff, anti-Maxine. I'm afraid that the Republicans are going to come out and pretend it's all normal. Let's talk infrastructure bill. But this isn't normal. We're attacking the institutions of democracy. And unless you, now, we went
So
through
your advice to them is what?
fight hard, fight fair, fight smart. But in boxing, we had to go up against Don King. And here's the example I'd say. When I was negotiating in competition with Don King, I'd say he has 100 tools in a deal. 93 might be illegal or unethical. But he's got 100 because none of them are off the table. Those are off the table. I've only got 7. I've got to be better and smarter and faster. And so I think the Democrats have to say, we're not going to go fight that gutter war that you're talking about. I don't believe in that gutter war. But they have to fight. That's the first thing. Healthcare, people have been lied to. There is, my brother's significant other believes that their pre-existing conditions are protected. When you have a party that says, this tax cut goes to you, this pre-existing condition goes to you, these troops are there for national security, when they're not. When you are lied to like that and you believe it, I don't know how Democrats are going to be able to break through that. What I hope most is oversight, because the corruption to me is heartbreaking. And you and I have done business in Indonesia, Philippines,
Julianne,
Brazil.
you were responding.
Well, 2 things. Democrats are going to have these chairmanships. So with oversight, you have Elijah Cummings.
Right.
I saw him just a week or so ago. I said, if you get this, what are you going to subpoena? He said everything.
He's a Howard. He's a
Yeah, I know. Okay, Rock, we got it. Any black
And do you
person.
think they'll comply with the subpoena?
But they have to now. I think they have to. But the other thing that I want to go out on a limb here and talk a little bit about Democratic leadership by suggesting that it might not be the best thing for Nancy Pelosi to be the speaker. I love Nancy. I'm a Californian girl at heart, and she was my congresswoman when I lived at home. But the fact is that she is like red meat to Trump.
Yes.
Wouldn't it make sense if she could somehow, and in Washington, people don't walk away from power, but if she could somehow usher in a CBC member as the speaker? Just imagine that. So it would be Clyburn.
Anybody that don't know those letters, Congressional Black Caucus.
So it could be
member.
Clyburn.
Yeah.
It could be Barbara Lee, who has said she will run for Democratic whip. Or it could even be Cedric Richmond, who's the head of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Right.
Younger people, Ayanna Pressley, Antonio Ocasio, the young lady from New York, I always mess up her last name. The younger people are, and there are some who said they will not vote for Pelosi. So why have an internal party fight around Pelosi if Pelosi can kind of take the high road and say, I'm going to usher in someone from the Congressional Black Caucus? I think it could be really fascinating. It could burnish her.
Can I offer an outside-the-box suggestion?
Real quick.
Nancy
Do
Pelosi
I have
has
a-
been.
do I know-
I know.
Am I
I want to get
going
to you.
saying
Armstrong.
this? I know what's going on here.
Hold
Come on now.
Yes,
Please.
sir.
Armstrong.
I
So
wanna
here's what I
build
wanted to ask you,
Thank
Armstrong.
you.
Here's what I wanted to ask you.
He's got to stand up
Sorry,
for
As an
himself.
observer,
Yes, thank you.
sometimes a gleeful observer.
Yeah, he's too gleeful.
Of what always seems to be Democrats snatching victory from the, or is it the other way around, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory with their dysfunction. You would say what?
I don't know, Rob. What did you say? Defeat from?
Yeah.
You know,
Defeat from the
Snatching
jaws of
defeat from victory
I
with their
think-
dysfunction.
I think what's lost sometimes is it what the American people want. The American people just don't want the divisiveness, the anger anymore. They want the Congress to work together for their benefit to move this country forward. And if they are going to take this power and all of a sudden they're going to go open up more Russian investigations, talking about impeachment, that's not the way. You
don't
may
think that's
get to
what people are
that.
gonna do.
Yeah, I just think that, and they got to show an effort to work with this president, because this president, if he hasn't learned anything else, and maybe last night was an indication, he's got to tone the rhetoric down. He has to work with this Congress. This is what
Do
the
you
American
think he's
people want.
capable of toning the rhetoric down?
It's not rhetoric, it's what he believes.
Yeah.
And I say
Everybody
that,
has a role to play in this. Listen,
I think the reason why
the
Pelosi,
American
she
people
brings out
want
the worst
Congress
in him.
to work for them, for a real legislative agenda, whether it's the infrastructure bill, whether it's immigration, whether it's health care. The American people have been in a state of shock over the last 2 years, and they're hoping, now that you've got a balance, they've given the House to the Democrats, the Republicans still have the Senate, and you've got Trump in the White House,
They
that they can
earned it.
come, they did earn it, there's no question about that. The American people want to see our government work, and there's less chaos.
We have 1 minute. I want each of you very quickly to tell me your dream in 15 seconds. What's your dream?
All right,
Going
I'm going to Dr. Malveaux for her dream first, and I'm going to reflect on
quickly,
mine.
please.
I have a dream that, what Dr. King said in the Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, peace and freedom for their spirits. I believe that through legislation and
Okay.
public policy, we
I
can
got
get
you.
to that.
Armstrong.
You know, everybody talks about this wonderful economy that we're experiencing, but there are many people that are not experiencing it. And one of the things that anger people about the caravan is why you bring people here and we're still poor and struggling. I just hope that they put policies in place to really empower the poor, to give them the
10
opportunity to
seconds,
capitalism.
Alexis. 10 seconds.
I'm grieving for America a little bit, but I'm a little more optimistic today. So I guess my dream would be, I know we're a flawed country with a flawed history. Many people can speak to that. But the core of what makes us is a nation of immigrants and dreamers and opportunity. We need to have a civilized society where people don't die in childbirth, where people aren't scared of getting old. We need that back, and we need to stop having to deal with Donald Trump every day.
Thank all of you for
No
joining
more
us this
Donald
evening. For more information on this program and any other program produced by WHUT, go to WHUT.org. Goodbye, and may God bless you.
This program was produced by WHUT, Howard University Television, and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.